When you go to the store, you see all these labels in the egg aisle that say free range, cage free, organic. What's the difference? I'm gonna break all that down for you so you know the truth behind what you're buying and where your dollar is going. Look at all this abundance from the pasture. Now we gotta rinse these and clean them up. Let's look at this cheapest variety of eggs first. This is just a large white grade A egg. And you notice the more adjectives on something, the more expensive it gets. So some people say they want brown eggs because they don't want to eat bleach. And the misconception is that like these white eggs have been bleached. And while there may be bleaching in the cleaning process, if you're buying eggs at an industrial scale, they have to clean them. And actually the laws are weird. They can actually sand these to get them down and clean them up. But that's not part of this discussion. Whether you buy a white egg or a brown egg, they just come from a different breed of chicken, and that's what gives the pigment. You can't tell a difference just by looking at the outside. When we see grade A on the box, that's really a definition of the cleanliness of the shell, making sure that it's not broken, there's not fractures in it. If you squeeze it, it shouldn't blow up on you. Inside, there's not a lot of air pocket. And also, when we crack this egg open, there is a clearly defined yolk. It doesn't look like scrambled. You have that separation from the egg whites and the yolk. That's grade A. There's also grade AA, which is even better, and then grade B, which is a step down. We typically don't see those in stores. Those are typically used for egg products that you would buy that have been minimally processed. So the first thing to know, grade A eggs. That's a measure of how clean, what they look like, and essentially how old they are. The next thing we see is large white. Now that's just a measurement of weight most of the time. So if we put this egg on the scale, we'll see that, look, we're large to extra large, we're good there. So there's white eggs. Now, if we look at the production process of this, most likely it's a large warehouse with lots of cages where the chickens are relatively isolated, and when they lay, their eggs go down like a conveyor belt system and are collected for eggs. So having the chickens in a cage like that doesn't give room for them to forage. Their feed doesn't have the biodiversity that they would on like pasture. Moving up the spectrum, we have these cage-free brown eggs. Now we talked about the difference first, brown and white, and how there really isn't one, but these brown eggs, being cage-free, did you know that cage-free, they could be in a warehouse? It doesn't matter, provided that they have space to move around. That's all that cage-free means. So they still don't have the biodiversity. They're being fed some sort of grain, and they have a little bit of room to like walk around and get exercise, but they do not have the ability to go outside. That's when we see like free-range eggs. Is chickens have the same ability to walk around in the cage-free environment, but they also have a little bit of room to go outside. There may be rules to how much pasture is required for them, but if they go out into a dirt floor, that still counts as, free range. Moving up the scale to what we produce is this. Here's our box if you bought eggs from us at the farm. But we have these pasture-raised eggs, and you can immediately see a difference in the shell and the color of the brown egg, and look at that weight. So these are super extra large, as big as they come, but that's from the breed of chicken that we've chose. But these pasture-raised birds have the ultimate amount of freedom. They have a coop that allows them protection at night. We've shown you this plenty of times, but they go out into fresh pasture daily. They can root around, have access to bugs and plants, as well as getting the supplemental feed that if the pasture, for whatever reason, doesn't have enough nutrients for them, they make sure that their diet is controlled and everybody's happy by giving them access to the pasture. And I think it results in the highest quality egg, and it also builds that sustainable system that we talk about so much, that each time we bring the chickens back, it's just better and better year after year. I'm gonna go ahead and crack these eggs so we can look at what's on the inside as well as the thickness of the shell, because I think that speaks a lot to the diet and the health of the chickens. Let's start with the white eggs themselves, the large white grade A eggs. So I've got some ramekins to help us do it. And that shell, I noticed immediately when I did it, That shell is, I don't want to say flimsy because that's not the right word, but it's just not nearly as robust as we'll see going down the line. We have pretty good color in the yolk, and then the white is, it's fine. Good for them. Let's see how the other ones look as we head up the line. Now we're down to the brown cage-free eggs. I don't really expect to see a huge difference between this and the white. Let's keep these organized in this way. So we've got the whites there. Now we've got the brown. That took more force to break than the white. And as I'm pulling it apart, there's more of this membrane that's holding it together. And that shell is robust. There's a thickness on that the whites didn't have. If we're looking at the color, they look very similar. If anything, this one, the white looks cloudier to me, and it doesn't, sorry. The egg white, oh, I got you. So this is the large white egg, and it looks cloudier to me. It looks like milkier. The brown cage-free egg looks like not as hazy. It looks more appetizing and less milky, but it looks yellower as well, where this one just looks like cloudy and milky and not super great. No shade. So finally, we move on to our pasture-raised egg. And that shell is super robust.
I know that's the shell.
The shell is robust. There's lots of membrane that's in there. Look at the thickness of the membrane here. That's significant compared to the other cage-free brown egg. There's just not nearly as much membrane in there. It's not as thick. The shell, you can see the thickness in the shell. This being the cage-free brown egg, this being the pasture-raised. But this membrane is really standing out to me as that was not really existent on the cage-free brown egg. You see that membrane on the inside? That's pretty cool. I haven't really seen that distinction. So if we go and take the pasture-raised egg, I should have brought some napkins, and look next to this one. The white looks transparent. The white in this hand looks like transparent almost by comparison to the yellowness. And this looks like the pasture-raised looks like a rich yellow inside that cloudy white, where this is more of a transparent white. We go back to the cage-free, and that one looks pretty clear too. It's still a little bit milkier than we go back to the white and the cage-free. This one looks like milky in a transparent and, I don't know, kind of cloudy way. This looks milky in, I don't know how to describe it. At the end of the day...
Why do you think it looks that way?
I think they're not getting... I think the cage-free and the large white eggs aren't getting the nutrients and not seeing the biodiversity and the ability to eat whatever they want. Now, take all of this with a grain of salt, because there's a study that says people think that the yellower egg tastes better, but that same study showed that there was no difference. But I know that's not true, because I eat these every day, and I can definitely, maybe we'll do a blind taste test one day. But the difference is really apparent when you bite in and you look at these things. But looking at them cracked in a pan, like this large white egg, probably pretty great, but it doesn't have the color, it doesn't have the consistency. Look at the liquidness of the white. That's pretty watery, right? Now if I take this one, look at that, right? We have a large goopy section, and it's more like mucusy as I get shells in there, whatever. And I think that correlates to nutrient loads that we can get from the pasture raised. They're eating bugs, they're eating grass, they're eating flowers, they're eating whatever it is that interests them, where the large white eggs only have access to what the farmer feeds them, or lack of the farmer feeds them.
So what's the take-home message?
Buy whatever you want as far as your budget allows, but ultimately if you're worried about supply lines, if you're worried about having the highest quality food, adding chickens to your system feels essential to me. This is why food costs are so expensive. One is we're bringing food from the farms that are half a world away to our local communities. So the same chicken coop that enriches the pasture and allows for us to leave it better than we found it every time is what differentiates us from the large commercial agriculture producers that have chickens in a warehouse that takes a lot of money to build and ultimately indebts the farmer And those regulations change all the time, and they're not regulations from government, they're regulation that comes from the producer. There's an interesting stat from Joel Salatin that says if only 1 in 4 people had chickens, we could completely do away with the industrial egg production and ultimately get a much higher quality product. They taste better, they leave the pasture and leave the systems better than we found it. By leaving the waste, they eat bugs, and then as the pasture recovers and creates more biodiversity, more plant life, more bug life, the chickens can come in and eat all that and then add that into the nutrient load for your eggs. It's really a wonderful system, but ultimately it's about freeing people from the food costs that are so high that everyone's experiencing right now.